Hytale's game director has just come out publicly sharing new details and a long list of their confirmed plans for the game. At the same time, he also directly responded to all the questions and hate that the studio have had over the years for not releasing Hytale. So for any skeptics out there and for anyone who needs a catch up, let's jump into what was said and we'll go over all of the new confirmations right after that. The comment posted by John Hendricks on the Hytale Info fan subreddit was a reply to a post titled, "Hytale, nearly a decade of development and still no beta? What's going on?" The post states, "I just read the Winter 2024 blog post and I have to say it's getting really frustrating to see the same old talk about playtests and vague progress updates without a mention of beta or release. It feels like they're dragging this out without giving the community who've been waiting for years any real answers. Is there actually a concrete plan to release Hytale to the public? Or are we stuck in an endless loop of, we're working on it?" Now, I'm no stranger to comments like these, even on my own videos. There's clearly a lot of doubt around Hytale as a project, and that spawns from the immense passion that came from the trailer. But this is when game director John took the opportunity to blast out an essay here, responding, quote, "I don't want to undermine anyone's angst, but the simple answer is a small, ambitious, and yes, talented team decided to make a game. The safe play would have been to just make something simple, but this group was ambitious, so after exploring options, they decided to start with a huge game. And so they worked hard for several years and found themselves with a lot of content and some really cool tech, but not a finished game. They shared what they had though, and it did attract a lot of attention, so then they kept sharing, but found themselves no closer to having that finished game. Fortunately, enough people wanted to see this dream become a reality that they were able to secure more funding, which then allowed them to recruit industry veterans from all disciplines and grow the team to meet that challenge. Everyone who joined them shared that same mission to get this ambitious game created. Tough choices were made, long hours committed, and now they find themselves moving into a new year having paid back significant design and technical debt, more ready than ever to see it through. You can be mad at them for being too ambitious at the start, but then there would be no Hytale. You can be mad at them for sharing their progress without realizing how much work they had left to do, but a less ambitious and more aware team would have just cancelled it in silence. Again, no Hytale, end quote. Now, what John is saying here really isn't too far from what I've expressed on this very channel, and what the team have mentioned several times over the years. A few users did share their thoughts below this comment, one saying the problem is more about a feeling of being left in the dark and the lack of transparent communication, rather than any doubts that the team is talented or not. Some users were happy about the straightforward, honest nature of this comment, saying whilst Hytale's initial team might have tried to go too big too soon, everyone loves ambitious game studios. We're always complaining about games that play it too safe, and many times daring to go big has paid off. Some hugely popular titles came from devs working on their very first commercial release who dared to dream big. There were also comments that this response felt a bit strawman and wasn't addressing the more apparent issue of the team not being realistic enough with their vision over the years. This has also led to worries that a lot of content in the game will now have to be cut to save time, but John did reassure us that he's, quote, only seen scope production aimed at getting the vision to a reasonable scope that we can iterate on, in brackets, which is still a big game, end quote. But it's important to remember that this is just John's perspective, and whilst he is fairly informed, he hasn't always been on the team. It's clear he says though that when he did join, there was a big gap between where they were and where they needed to be to ship a proper game. On the other hand though, he says he also witnessed their commitment to seeing that game made and really respects their willingness to ask for help along the way, which funnily enough actually ties back to the clip we got of Riot Games' ex-CEO sharing a very similar respect.
They came up with the demo of Hytale, and I right away saw that we had something special. It was both familiar but also different. Different because it's a different game, it's a different genre than what we're used to. But familiar in the way they talk about the community, the way they're willing to challenge conventions, their dedication to one game, and their commitment to make it better and better for years to come.
I mean, it is quite obvious at this point that the team didn't have a fully finished game when they released the trailer. I mean, we all knew that though, and expected them to hopefully start finishing it as we approached that beta. When they decided to switch the new engine, it wasn't like they were throwing away a fully finished, ready-to-play game. It still had a really long way to go, and a lot of limitations that the team hadn't expected when they released that trailer. Again, this being their first game. It was only when Riot stepped in and funded the project that they were able to get professional guidance guidance and reapproach the development with a longer timeline in mind that better fit their ambitious vision and the expectations of that huge trailer. Some will say that this was the team misleading us by practically suggesting the game was ready in the trailer, and I do agree here that the team did oversell themselves. But for the sake of fairness, if we do want to play devil's advocate, it was an announcement trailer. Their scope at the time was a lot smaller as they didn't expect such a big reaction and probably planned to roll out updates over the course of a much longer beta. Besides, there was clearly still a lot of stuff to show for the 3 years they had spent developing that old engine before the trailer was released. John even said in another Reddit post, quote, "There was more content in the old engine by a mile, but the new engine is a more complete game engine." And so while we may have got over 30 minutes and hundreds of pictures of zones and biome footage, a huge array of over 200 mobs, loads of models, blocks, assets, all of this stuff, while it looked really cool, remained irrelevant without a functioning, cohesive game engine. So for everyone screaming that the team should have released the game in 2020, unfortunately the reality is that that would have left us with an incredibly scattered and rushed experience that wouldn't be able to do half the things the team had promised. Hytale would have flopped. Now that that has all been fixed though, they can hit the ground running, porting all of those things over to the new engine, ready to tie them together in a more logical way. Another angry Reddit post stated in all caps, "The game has been done for 4 years. What are you doing? Minecraft was made in 6 days. You're going on 10 years. With John again replying, quote, "Simple answer, the game was not done 4 years ago." That shouldn't be a shock. In fact, it would be shocking if it was done and they didn't release it. The team started addressing this idea 4 years ago. See posts on the new engine, recruiting, and creative. They finally achieved that initial cohesion that they were looking for when they released the trailer. That was the goal of this last year's milestone, the fill in the blanks milestone. Now, let's quickfire some of the main confirmations that the game director gave to us during an hour-long interview on this channel in December. Starting off, there will be an offline mode for Hytale. You won't always have to be connected to the internet to play. You'll be happy to know that there will still be a public beta / playtest before full release. The slash there is a bit of an eye raiser. I wonder if playtest suggests more of a vertical slice or only a small area of the game being accessible rather than the whole thing. We debated this in a recent Hytale roundtable, concluding that they probably would give us access to most of the game, as it would be too little too late to only get something small. There will be AI companions, as we've heard a bit about before. There is a form of automation in the game too, possibly inspired by some mechanics in games like Satisfactory. I don't know if it will take the form of electricity or something akin to powered powder that you can find like dust in caves, who knows. The Capital, which is the online social hub, is also apparently going to aim to play a role for every type of player, not just acting as a lobby, but being the main place to hang out and connect with everyone else. It will also have player islands, which are going to be individual, unique spaces that can be customized and have all sorts of features based on those player types. When he brings up these types, it actually reminds me of when I used to do games design, when we would try to actually target these 4 main categories of killers, achievers, socializers, and explorers. These generalizations broadly cover all of the different types of players you'll tend to find in a game. This is actually based on the Barty taxonomy of player types if you want to look up more about the classifications. John also said that he foresees competitive play being a big thing, but also believes that the title of esport has to find the game, rather than the game trying to fit the mold of what they think an esport should be. Which honestly, I think is a very smart mindset. Things like this remind me that we are really dealing with a seasoned team of game industry veterans here. Whilst it may be Hypixel Studios' first game, it's many of the actual team members' 5th, 10th, or even 20th game. When players get Hytale, they will also get access to a huge array of tools, the very same tools the team are using to make their adventure mode and multiplayer experiences, which means players will be able to create things on the exact same level of Hypixel Studios. John said you're far more free and unlimited than traditional level editors in other games, and will even get a chance to use these tools before launch. John then advises as well that if you want to get a head start on these things, while you will be able to do a lot in-game without needing to learn any tools like this, you can start learning the coding language Lua U to prepare for scripting in Hytale, as well as Blockbench for modeling, and Noesis GUI for creating user interfaces like menus or even custom hotbars. Then, when asked how much the story of Adventure Mode, which we know very little about, will impact gameplay, he says that by default, the Adventure adventure mode will tell an explicit and important story. Despite this, however, players will have a lot more options when it comes to fine-tuning what is in their world. They don't have to participate in that story if they don't want to. We've known for years now that adventure mode will in fact have some very deep lore, factions with complicated backstories and relationships with one another, and even details about the world's ancient history which can be uncovered. So I think it will be really interesting to see how the team weave that narrative into the survival RPG experience, and whether when generating a new world, we will actually have any control over how much of the story is in our world. Lastly, John wanted to clear up that the team no longer talk about dates because as a studio, they are quality driven and have no interest in the pressures and crunch mentality that comes with deadlines. They also just don't want to have to cut anything or release an unfinished product. Imagine that after all these years. Now they're porting everything to the new engine, which was of course motivated by the team's desire to go cross-platform, but not just that, they wanted to be able to extend and update the game more efficiently in the future and also significantly improve the overall performance of the game. So for the first half of 2025, their focus is now on combat and creative play, all in time for them to bring their first creator team into the game to use said creative tools to build their own combat-based minigame, which with luck we'll all probably get to play at launch as a demo for what's possible, what can be made in Hytale as a creator. Honestly, this has got to be one of the biggest winter updates we've had from Hytale in a long time, with a Christmas image even being posted, a little update to the Outlander concept art we got back in 2023, along with a blog post, a technical explainer, gameplay footage of the new engine, an interview confirming all sorts of features, as well as a clear plan for their next steps in 2025 that they've communicated very transparently to us. Honestly, I think John's rebuttals to the hate and criticism stand pretty strong here, and hopefully they've convinced you that Hytale is still a game worth waiting for. Check out another Hytale video on screen now. Remember to subscribe for all of that Hytale news. Stay safe and keep free.